Okay, we're here with Dr. Robert Cassanova from NIAC, the NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts. Well, thank you for joining us, and I should introduce NIAC as being kind of the forerunner in advanced technologies at NASA. You guys do a lot of investigation into the latest and greatest concepts in breakthrough propulsion and advanced propulsion concepts. And I'm wondering if you could give us kind of an overview of some of your favorite technologies and where you think that these things are going.
Sure. Of course, let me explain first that a lot of the concepts that we fund, even though they're aimed at in the long range, sometimes over the horizon, as they say, we have several that have inspired near-term development of enabling technologies. One that relates directly to the NASA exploration program is the Biosuit. This is a spacesuit that fits the astronaut like a glove. It uses mechanical counterpressure. It allows them to freely bound around on planetary surfaces or for EVA activities outside of spaceships. We have another that has reached some maturity called the rotating momentum exchange tether. This is a propulsion or transportation concept that would be, one application would be in low Earth orbit to essentially throw cargo pods or passenger pods from low Earth orbit towards the moon and the lunar surface, or maybe onto Mars.
Now, I believe that I've read about this in the past, and if it's the same thing I'm thinking of, it has kind of a series of leverage actions that add a lot of speed to something over 2 or 3 different passes within the device. Is that the...
Well, actually, not exactly. The rotating momentum exchange tether is a long tether, probably a couple 100 kilometers long, that one application of it would put it in low Earth orbit. And at the same time, it's not only in orbit, but it's rotating. So you have the orbital speed plus the rotational speed, and you're using that to latch on to cargo pods and then throw them using the combination of the orbital speed plus the rotational speed to achieve these very high velocities that will allow you to escape the Earth's gravity.
Okay. So that's really, I guess for the most part, kind of a fuel-saving endeavor then, because you can get it up there a certain distance and then throw it the rest of the way.
Correct. Well, every time you pick up something or throw something, you're either gaining momentum or losing momentum. And so you have to regain that momentum, but you can do that by using the tether as an electrodynamic device to pick up energy from the passage of the tether through the Earth's magnetic field. And you can reboost the system by using this energy gain through that process.
Sure.
And all of these are principles of physics that are well understood. These are not anything requiring breakthrough physics. These are things that are pretty well understood.
Yeah, this would be, I think the patent office calls it a novel application. It's an understood technology implemented in a new manner to provide the breakthrough results.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, it's a good way to go because it reduces some of the variables, I guess, that come with some of the more esoteric technologies.
Right.
Well, in terms of the Biosuit, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it sounds almost like that's similar to some of the flight suits, maybe in a way, where they produce a hydraulic pressure that restores the blood to the correct parts of the body.
Well, to some extent it is. The flight suits do exactly what you said. They keep the blood from rushing from the brain and preventing pilots from blacking out. But the Biosuit is much more sophisticated. It uses electroactive polymers as a material that fits close to the skin and uses this mechanical counterpressure to protect the astronaut from the vacuum. But these electroactive polymers will also allow the astronaut to move freely. They are driven by a voltage that would, depending on where you're applying this voltage and how you're applying it, would cause the material to either contract or expand and thereby allow the astronaut to move freely.
Well, as I understand it, DARPA's done some research in the past into synthetic muscle fibers based on contractible polymers. Does this a project that shares resources between DoD and NASA and other organizations, or?
I don't know the details of what DARPA is doing, but I have heard that they are applying electroactive polymers to a number of things. For instance, you can use electroactive polymers as a skin on an aircraft to cause the aircraft to morph its shape to suit the flight regime that it's in. So electroactive polymers are being developed for a number of applications and not just spacesuits. But the advantage of this spacesuit is that it would be very lightweight and would allow the astronauts to move around with less expenditure of their own energy.
Yeah, well, the thing that makes it really interesting for me is that, following all the propulsion stuff, I mean, there's so much debate and controversy and designs and concepts that are being proposed and, I guess, discussed that we almost rarely think about spacesuits these days, and yet that's really one of the fundamentals of doing anything in space outside of the craft itself.
That's right. Hold up until we pass.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd like to touch a little bit on, in the propulsion arena itself, in addition to the tethers, there have been a number of concepts presented at this conference in the Section F group, which is kind of a growing and yet somewhat fringe, I guess, considered area. They're getting into hyperdimensional physics theories. High-frequency gravity waves kind of remain, I guess, a standby in this area. Also, some interesting stuff with Mach's principle and the Woodward effect. Are any of those things probably going to come by the NIAC table in the future, or?
Conceivably they could, and of course we would welcome that, and we'd be happy to peer review them and consider them. I think it's very healthy that the state conference encourages these kind of sessions to look at these phenomena. A lot of them are in areas of physics that are not totally understood, and of course I'm really encouraged by some of the papers that are a little more pragmatic now in considering some of these things like wormholes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And these are fascinating possibilities, but as one paper by Eric Davis outlined, it's going to take a tremendous amount of energy to make something like this happen.
Absolutely.
But I think it's healthy to get this out in the open, get people discussing it. It may inspire other, what I would call hardcore physicists to look at this phenomena and begin thinking about some of the physics that need to be examined to look at these and eventually result in a useful concept for propulsion.
Yeah, well, one of the things that the open source community has always had the general concerns about is the peer review process. And I think it's because there's such a diversity of contribution that many people just can't write to that level, or perhaps just don't have the experience in doing so. But what I'm seeing is a diversity of ideas at this conference that almost puts that idea, completely away, out of mind, I guess, because, I mean, ideas all over the place, including there was one that was an ESP experiment that they conducted yesterday. So it seems as though this process is both diverse and professional. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on the format of it.
Yeah, well, the conference is a combination of sessions that describe programs like the NASA exploration program, which primarily is using available technologies, near-term technologies that we understand well, and frankly, for what they're trying to do, I agree with that. To go back to the moon, we basically know how to do that. What we don't understand about the lunar program and the Mars program is how we stay there for long periods of time. So a lot of work and new thought needs to be put into that.
Sure.
Going on to the peer review process, a lot of agencies have a very active peer review process that is building on research that has been ongoing for years, and so you naturally, when a new proposal comes in, you ask the people to do a peer review on that proposed activity. And to some extent, that process builds on what's already been done. What NIAC is trying to do is to jump well beyond what has been done, and jump beyond the incremental steps, jump beyond the evolutionary process into what we hope will one day be considered revolutionary breakthroughs.
Sure.
So our peer review process, we still use very credible people. We use people that are experts in their fields. But the difference, I think, is in the instructions. We ask them to be flexible, think beyond what they're currently doing, what the field is currently doing, and to consider the possibilities that what is being proposed might work.
Oh, absolutely.
We have in our criteria is built in, I guess, a guidance that we don't expect the enabling technologies to be available, and we don't expect the science to be totally understood. Now, of course, if someone is proposing something that that is expecting us to break some basic law of physics, we're going to question that very highly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Because NIAC is not, our role is not funding basic physics. We're not funding research experiments. What we're expecting people to do is to propose revolutionary concepts that would inspire other people to maybe jump in and do some of the basic research that would make it possible. But we're expecting them to give guidance through the overall development of the concept.
Well, I'd like to also touch on NIAC's role in a changing NASA, because one of the buzzwords at the conference this year has been heritage technologies, but which I think in many ways is similar to the IT industry's return to core competencies after the dot-com crunch. Has this impacted your organization either positively or negatively, and are there any changes that are expected as a result?
NIAC is still proceeding. We're still funding. We're still funded by NASA, and we're still funding phase 1 and phase 2 concepts. So we're still in business and still playing, I think, a unique role within NASA. And because we are looking at advanced concepts, and in many cases, the advanced concepts that we have funded have spun off a need for enabling technologies that have inspired other parts of NASA, like the SBIR program, for instance.
Sure.
To fund technologies that would support these advanced concepts. And I think that's a very useful role for NIAC also, not only providing concepts that may be breakthroughs like the Biosuit, like the rotating quantum exchange tether, and a number of others that are on our website, but they're encouraging NASA as a whole to look at enabling technologies that they may not have looked at otherwise.
Absolutely. Well, is it possible even that by refocusing the core competencies at the main body of the NASA organization, do you think that might even put NIAC in a better role to become even more of the specialist organization to focus on these things?
Well, we're one of the few programs in NASA that is looking at what I would call real advanced concepts. Over the years, NASA has had a wealth of ideas and programs and concepts that they have investigated, and we're trying to leap well beyond that now. And so NASA, of course, as you said, they're focusing on near-term concepts to get them back to the moon and hopefully on Mars at some point in the future. And so they have to build on what they know.
Sure.
With the time scale that the NASA program is aimed at now, you can't just totally throw everything away and start over again with a clean sheet of paper.
Absolutely.
Now you can improve on what they have done in the past, and I'm sure they will be doing that. And in order to have a sustained lunar colony and eventually landing on Mars that would sustain a presence on Mars, we are going to need breakthroughs. We are going to need a continuing research program. And so I think after NASA settles into an established plan to go back to the moon and then on to Mars, that's when you will see NASA coming back to asking the questions about where do we need breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And so I think NIAC is in the process of providing some possibilities for future consideration by NASA.
Well, I guess I should probably close with the question, well, because I should mention your website, and is it okay to get your URL for the audience?
Oh, sure. The NIAC website is www.niac.usra.edu.
Okay, so it's www.niac.usra.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
NIAC.usra.edu.
Okay. Thanks. Well, and in terms of media outreach, because more and more of the world is going online and more people have access to broadband for clips such as this, Have you considered expanding the online presence? And if so, are there outreach programs that might come out of that, such as maybe an extension of the SBIR program, or perhaps more support services for the people who ultimately would be submitting ideas to NIAC for review?
You mean in terms of proposal support?
Yeah, well, really just in terms of being able to put some of the infrastructure online so that people can access it a little bit, well, I guess in a more casual way while they're browsing, and have more information from the get-go to hopefully allow them to submit better and more focused proposals at the end.
Well, we have, NIAC's policy is that whenever we fund something, we publish it on our website. And all the final reports for everything we funded are on our website, so people can read what has been accomplished by all the previous advanced concept funding that we've handed out. When we send out a call for proposals, we give general instructions, general guidance about what we're looking for, and then we really don't want to give people too much guidance about what we expect in their proposal.
Okay.
We're looking for very creative, innovative people, and so as long as they're presenting a proposal that's readable, clearly stated, we don't want to give them an outline that they're just going to fill in the blanks. We want them to use their own creativity as they put their proposal together, so we really don't want to give them a lot of guidance.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time. Again, we've been speaking with Dr. Robert Cassanova from the NASA Institute of Advanced Concepts, and we're at STAFE 2006.